In December of 2020, Big Heavy World hosted Art Mosh, a 2-day virtual summit of presenters who gathered to help Vermont's creative community survive and recover from the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, discussing how they've been affected both financially and creatively. They also share their plans for post-COVID life as an inspiration to others. In this final episode of this 6-part series, we hear from Liz Sunde, co-founder and executive director of Music to Life, along with artists Amanda Pascali, Stephen Hernandez, and Miles Bullen. Be warned that in this episode we discuss depression and suicide. And if you're someone who's looking for some help, someone to talk to, please reach out to the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. That's 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255.
Craig, thank you so much. Well, and thanks, Jim. And I mean, this is such a great way to kind of step into this world of Vermont where I have called home for 20 years. But we have been working nationally, for the most part. We do a little bit in Vermont, but it's just great to be able to bring our learning from this year and just be part of this. So, thank you so much. And I love that this is kind of archived as a touchstone for future generations. So I do think we will be sharing. You talked about education, Craig, and I do think, it's my hope that this will be helpful. I know that the artists that we're with tonight, or today, are we're always with them at night. So I'm used to saying the artists we're with tonight. But I know this has been a real year for them. And I always say this, but I have felt so honored to be with them. And I'll share with you, so part of the reason I've been able to be with them, I am not a musician myself, but as my dad says, I know where to find one. So my dad is, as some of you might know, Paul Stuckey of the folk trio Peter, Paul, and Mary, and I have chosen to make Vermont my home. But he and I have worked together nationally to create Music to Life as a national nonprofit to build activism through music, sort of building on the legacy of all that great 60s music and 60s activism and sort of bringing it into the modern day. And so, and one of the projects that we're most proud of, and frankly, that I think will be the foundation upon which we build for years to come, is something called our Activist Musician Accelerator. And this is a program that works with social change musicians who want to, be change agents in their community. And so we connect them with the resources, the partners, the mentors they need, to feel supported and again, to be connected and to take their vision for how they want to see change made in their community and go make it real. So here we are. It is kind of a silver lining, and maybe, Miles and I was just on the phone with Amelia the other day, Miles and Amanda and Stephen, maybe you'll talk about this, but what a year for us to have instituted our very first Activist Musician Accelerator, right? Like all online, so that these guys could get that amazing support. So it's just the timing. I mean, we, couldn't have planned it better. So I do want to let them each introduce themselves. And what I'm thinking about for an agenda here, and we'll have lots of, discussion time and all that, but what I'm thinking about for an agenda here is kind of what we outlined in our description. So this notion, I want to sort of lay 3 questions on everybody as we go through here. This notion of, how you've survived sort of creatively and socially through this pandemic. How you've managed to also kind of serve people in need, right, as this pandemic has sort of raged around us. And then what you're thinking about for moving forward, like how this past year and your work kind of balancing those two things, yourself creatively and your social change work, how that kind of now makes you think about sort of a post-COVID world, sort of what the next phase might be. And the goal being, for those of you listening or watching in the future, hello. The idea here is for you guys watching to come away with kind of tips and tools to, care for your creative self, right, as an artist, but also, to figure out how you can care for those that you might be drawn to helping, right, in your community. So let me start. Let's do a quick just a round of intros, you guys. Why don't we just go through and and just quickly introduce yourselves. And then what I think I'll do is I'll just go through kind of question by question, rather than having each of you answer all three questions together. I think let's just do kind of question by question. So Miles, you want to get us started? Just sort of introduce yourself. We know you're from Portland, Maine. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Miles, and I'm sort of a musician, poet, gallivanting, teaching artist. Before COVID, I was full-time touring artist. I did 140 shows last year, traveling through 33 states and multiple countries. And this year I stayed at home. And yeah, I guess that's it for now.
All right. Thanks, Miles. Stephen, you're the next in my window.
All right. My name is Stephen Hernandez. So originally I'm from Houston, Texas. I am now in Austin, Texas. And so I'm a music artist, also a teaching artist as well, working with students in middle school, high school, and even young adults as well, teaching positive outlets, literacy, and self-esteem through hip hop.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. Amanda? Where are you? I don't see you in my windows. There you are. Hi.
I'm right here. Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda Pascali. I'm based in Houston, Texas, but I was born in New York City. I coined a genre for my music because it didn't quite fit in, American folk music, nor did it fit in world music. So I coined my own genre, which is called immigrant American folk music. It's too foreign for here, too foreign for home, and never enough for both. I'm an internationally touring singer-songwriter, bilingual singer-songwriter, and similar to what Miles said, I usually tour all over the world, but this year I stayed at home.
Yep. Okay. Well, thank you very much, you guys. So let's go through, and I don't have to kind of keep going down the row here if you guys really want to, if you want to raise your hands and jump in first. But let's start by exploring survival here, sort of creative and social isolation. Like just some thoughts about it. And just how has it been going? And, Miles is such a great, part of what Miles does is what is that? If it hurts your healing, right? Or something like that. Like Miles, you were just so walk right through it, right? So, So I guess I just feel free to sort of share just how crappy it's been too. Like we're not trying to paint a rosy picture here. We're like, this has been crappy, right? Yeah. So how you been dealing with the crap, right?
Well, all right, I'll start. At the end of January, I lost my grandfather. And at the end of February, I lost my father. And middle of March, I lost four of my, tours, 4 months worth of tour, which was not only all my income and my, which took 6 and 7 months before that to prepare. It's also my therapy. It's the way that I release, the things I'm going through. It's a very therapeutic practice for me. So I lost all of that by March and had to kind of reconsider everything. I had to, rewrite my life really quickly while grieving and while, personally grieving and globally grieving for the world. And so how I've been surviving, I feel fortunate. I don't think that, I think that there's a lot of folks, I know a lot of folks who don't have the sort of resources that I have as far as a community, people who love me. Like I have people who care about me no matter what. And through my life of, full-time job is meeting people. That's what I do. I connect with humans. I feel a lot of almost guilt for being in a place where I'm cared about, because I know so many people who just don't have community. They don't have a sense of belonging. They don't have people checking in on them. I know a lot of people who don't even have have places to live. There's a lot of unhoused folks in my community who are sleeping outside in the snowbanks right now. So a part of my survival is being grounded and grateful for the resources I have, and being creative and outreaching as much as I can, and being supportive, to others who have even less than I do. So that's been my way of coping with loss, is to find a place where I can give.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Miles, other folks, Amanda or Stephen, do you want to hop in on that?
I can go ahead. I think, Liz, you said before that you wanted us to tell you how crappy it is, that you don't want us to paint a rosy picture. Last night I was trying to prepare for this. It may sound silly because I guess it's just kind of a casual thing, but I was trying to prepare for this, and I was trying to think, like, what advice can I offer to somebody who's trying to keep their positivity during a time that's really hard for artists. And you also said something. You said, tell us how you're getting through the crap. And I think the first thing that I want to say is sometimes you don't. And like some days, you can't notice it. Like at the beginning of this whole thing, it was my last semester of college. And so all my classes got switched to online. I didn't have a graduation ceremony. And so, initially I was like, oh, it's fine. I'm not fazed by it. I can do this. It doesn't matter, and by the time the summer comes and it's going to be time for my European tour, this is all going to be over for sure. And I kind of like prided myself on how tough I could be. And I think that what I didn't know was that there were a lot of feelings that were being pushed down. And then some days you just realize, like, I'm actually not okay, and I didn't take the time to reflect on that. So I guess some advice that I would give people is that artists are feeling people. Like, we have emotions and we feel sad, and there are people that have it worse than us. But that doesn't mean that it's not okay to be upset about it. And that doesn't mean that feeling upset about it isn't valid. So if you need to take a moment and feel upset about something, that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're ungrateful. So I guess one thing for me is, knowing that I have people that I can be around, that I can openly feel around, and that they don't judge me for that. I feel like that has gotten me through it a lot.
Yeah, that's lovely. I totally get that. Totally get that. Yeah, Stephen, you hopped off. Are you okay now? You're back on. Did you want to?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what happened. My computer just kicked me out real quick.
Anyway.
But yeah, I'm back. So similar, I mean, as I'm sure everyone in the world has been affected by COVID, obviously. So I was doing a lot of speaking at schools and universities and things like that. And then when COVID hit, and then also was doing rideshare, a big part of my income was rideshare. And so when that hit, we transitioned from me working full time to me being a stay-at-home dad. And so that's been a great thing, but it's also been very challenging because just with all the different things that come with society and the different men versus women roles and household and things like that. So typical men used to think, oh man, the woman that stays home, like, what did you do all day? Right? It's like the house is a mess, the food's there, but what's going on? And so now I'm that person. And so, sometimes my wife, so thankfully she's been able to go work, start working full time because she was working part time. And so now she's like, what did you do all day? Right? Like the kids are a mess. They're still in your pajamas. The house is a mess, And so that has been it's been a challenge because just So I've been doing homeschool because of like, sending kids to go to school. So I'm the homeschool dad, but then I'm also disciplined dad. And I also cook, make breakfast, lunch, dinner. And I don't, I'm trying to figure out, okay, what am I making today? I've been making potatoes for the whole week. And then, so caring for them, they wake up around like 7 and then they go to sleep around 7:30. And then I'm like, okay, now I got some time for myself. And now I want to work on my music, but I'm just too tired. Like I just want to rest and not. So it's been like really a balancing act, trying to figure out, okay, how do I self-care? But then also I have my son and daughter that I got to care for. And then I also have to care about my wife because she needs time too. And so there's all these other emotions. And then obviously, my family's all in Houston. And so they got hit with COVID, like bad, same thing as here. And so my brother got it. My sister-in-law, she has been fighting cancer for the past 5 years. She had it. And thankfully they're okay. And just like one person after another. And it's like, the worries, the anxiety, everything just kind of it's constant. It's like, okay, help me be a leader, help me to be, but then also care about myself because I can't carry all this weight and not care about myself because then I'm going to, because a few years ago, I dealt with depression, like very bad, like suicidal thoughts, depression. And I was like, okay, I can't go back into that. Which a lot of people are experiencing, especially in the holidays. Like, how do I fight those emotions? And so, like, very much like Miles was saying, like, music is my therapy, but I don't have time to do my therapy. So I'm just pushing these emotions down as much as I can, but trying to put on that happy face, right? Like, I always do vlogs. Like, so vlogging is something that I do, just hanging out with the kids. We do projects. Right now, we're doing like a gingerbread man thing right now before we got on. And so I'm like, okay, I need to stay in the moment. I think staying in the moment is important because I get on my Facebook and I get on my Instagram and I'm posting all these pictures. But even when I was going through that depression, I was like, I'm posting all these things. And we went to like a bunch of trips. We went to Thailand, California, and Florida, all in the same year, just as family vacations because I was doing Uber and Lyft and I had more time. But at the same time, my marriage was under so much pressure. Like my marriage is like just falling apart. And it's like, it's fake. Y'all see this, but it's fake. And so now I'm kind of like, okay, I need to stay in the moment because these, it was hard, trying to teach my kids, but at the same time, I'm like, wow, I'm never going to have these moments again with them. I'm never going to have this time again with them. So let me stay in the moment. And maybe I don't capture that video. Maybe I don't capture that picture, but I remember it and they remember it. And that's kind of been the best thing, is just trying to stay in the moment and say, okay, tomorrow, I don't know what's going to happen. Yesterday sucked, but today I have to take care of today. I have to look at today because how I treat or how I don't treat my son and daughter, they're going to keep those memories and they're going to remember. I remember when dad was busy and he was on he was doing his videos and I was playing by myself. And one of the biggest things that my kids always ask us, Dad, will you play with me? Hold on, I'm busy. I got to do this project. Hold on, I'm busy in 5 minutes. And so just even as I'm talking about it, I'm like, I have to. That's the most important thing. We say it's the most important thing. We say it is, but is it really? I'm working because I want to provide for them, but at the same time, am I going to spend that time with them? So it's that balancing act. And so right now, my biggest job has been doing video editing. I've been doing a lot of videos for a lot of people, softball included, and all these but at the same time, I have to say, okay, but my art is important as well. So I need to take time to do my art as well. So it's been a real balancing, juggling act. But I think as Amanda was saying and Miles was saying is having those people to say, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing good. I have a lot of Christian friends. I'm in the Christian faith. And we say, oh, I'm blessed, too blessed to be stressed. Like, no, how are you doing? How are you really doing? And asking other people as well. How are you doing? Like, I don't care about what the Instagram says. I don't care what Facebook says. How are you doing? Because it's important. So, yeah.
Ooh, thanks, Stephen, for sharing. Wow. What went through my head, certainly as you were talking and, Amanda and Miles, as you were talking, is like, do you feel kind of profoundly changed? Like, has this year been one of these where you have now, either in your outlook or your approach or how you ground yourself, is there something now that just hasn't been there before that is here now because of this? So that's a question that came up, and maybe we should just put there, like, there's so many things coming up for me hearing you, and I've been with you, for this whole year, but that just, every conversation exchange is another opportunity to learn something. So there's that I'm putting over here, because I also am once again so amazed that you have been able to balance and manage this circumstance and give back to your communities, because I've seen it. As I was mentioning, these guys have been in this project where we've been really sort of encouraging them and nurturing their kind of community-oriented work, right? This, Stephen, you're just like, how are you enough for anyone, right? So I just wonder how you've been able to, so let's come back to the how you have profoundly changed, and let's just think for a minute. I'd love to get your thoughts on sort of how have you managed to balance, because you all, and maybe that's the thing, is you all operate right from the heart, and you all operate right from the kind of, in service, you are in service people, right? So maybe that's how, but how do you do it? So how do you do it how have you done the community thing? I've watched you do it, but how have you, I'm curious about your reflections. So Stephen, I'll switch over to maybe, Amanda or Miles, if you want to start, and we'll come back to you for that question. So.
Sure, I can check in. At the beginning of the quarantine lifestyle, I was reached out to a community. There's a recovery community where it's like a treatment center, but it's sort of like an education program that folks in recovery can go to, and they can get treatment, and then they take courses and kind of build in like skill-based therapeutic practices into their recovery program. And I've known this guy, Jeremy, for a few years now, and he reached out to me at the beginning of the quarantine and was like, hey, I would love for you to teach a writing workshop as a part of this recovery program. Because I'm a person in recovery myself. I've lived with I've lived with addicts my whole life. My family and friends are all, victims of substance use abuse. And so I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And I started it in March, and I still do it. I teach 2 creative writing workshops every single week to this recovery center. It's like a private group, with folks. And that was just me saying yes. Like, I didn't want to do anything. I wanted to sleep for 5 months. I hated myself. I was sad and depressed. And I've had an identity crisis. I didn't know who I was. I didn't feel like myself. I wasn't doing the things I do. I wasn't being the person I am. But I said yes. I said, okay, I'll do this, And now it's something I look forward to every week. After just doing it every single week, it's a part of my ritual. It's a part of my practice. It's like a healthy habit that got placed into my day, into my calendar. And then, it started with 1, and then it moved to 2. And then I have a friend who has like a community art space who was like, hey, would you teach a workshop here? I was like, sure. So now I do that one too. And then random live stream events for different charities, I've been doing just lots of in-service things for mental health workshops. I did a show for this college group called Active Minds, and they focus on mental health and bringing mental health into schools. And I did a performance for them. It's just like, I just kept saying yes to things when I had no ambition and no strength at all. My weakest, lowest point of my life. But somehow people were reaching out and asking things from me. And by saying yes, it empowered me and it gave me strength. So even though I was doing work, the work was much more for me than I knew it was going to be. Like, I didn't know that saying yes to all these things was going to really affect my life this much. Because in the past, I'd say yes to stuff because I'm like, oh, I need to work. I need to make money. I need to connect with people. I'm a hustler. I'm going. I'm going to do a show every single day if I can. But I was not that this year. This year I was in my bed, curtains closed, sleeping as much as possible. And then when people asked me things, I felt like it was bringing me back to life.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Mm. All right. Thoughts, Amanda, on your kind of your capacity to kind of connect with community through all this?
Yeah. So, I'm a really stubborn person. I don't know if it's because, I've been given a lot of privilege, I think, because when my parents came to the US, they had absolutely nothing. And so they worked hard and made a lot of sacrifices to save up enough money to go to school and have a family and provide things for me, and encourage me to pursue art and music and, have instruments and not have to worry about taking care of my sisters. Instead, I could concentrate on writing songs and doing other things like that. So I think growing up like that, being able to have a lot of things, has made me very stubborn. And so I decided from a young age that music was what I was born to do, because I could see the joy on other people's faces whenever I played for them. And so since I was little, I've had this dream of making even more people happy with my music and thinking, this is what I was born to do. This is the universal language. And if I have relatives in other countries across the world that are watching me and proud of me because I can create beautiful music that transcends borders, then this is what I was born to do. So for me, coming out of college, getting ready to go on a big tour, and then having that taken away from me being a very stubborn person, I didn't buy an audio interface. I didn't buy a special live stream microphone. I didn't do any of that because that wasn't good enough for me. That's not what I'm born to do. I'm born to be a musician, but not to my camera, to real people, to people who are going to give me hugs and tell me about how I'm a great role model for their daughter and, things like that. So when all of this happened, I didn't try to pivot and become a live stream musician. Instead, I said, right now, because I'm stubborn, my dreams are not going to happen, but that doesn't mean that other people's dreams can't happen. And so that was the moment that I was like, if I can't make myself happy, I'm going to try to make something happen for somebody else. And so I started doing my work with the immigrant community in Houston, albeit virtual. And I was in a online ESL class, like a Zoom ESL class, because I was working with an ESL teacher. And she said, Amanda, today's lesson, I made it a lesson about one of your songs. And so there's a song that I wrote about, wanting to grow up and make your family feel proud of you because you've really done something with your life and you've become someone important and made an impact on a lot of people. And the song is called Give Me a Hero. And so she crafted this lesson about my song, Give Me a Hero. And she asked the class, what does it mean to be a hero to you? And the class was, it was a very small class, and it was all girls, and they were all from Mexico. And so they wrote down in their journals what it means to be a hero, and started speaking out loud to practice their English, telling me what it means to them to be a hero. And then I played the song for them. And, I think especially the fact that they were girls and they were close to my age, just really made me feel like, if I'm not doing music, if I'm not doing performing and traveling all over the world, which is what I was born to do, this is the next thing, because I was making something happen for somebody else. And I think they were able to be vulnerable with me and not worry about me, because language learning is a two-way street. There's the way of them trying to speak to you, but then also the way of you making the effort to understand them. And I was making that effort to understand them. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, for me, similar to what Miles said, I started saying yes to things that I didn't really necessarily seem like I wanted to do at the beginning, because I did want to sleep as well and just wait for everything to be over. But then at the same time, I started saying yes to things, and things like this happened. And so I'm not a live stream musician, and I'm not doing a lot of live stream shows or trying to make the virtual thing happen. I've kind of put my dreams on hold. And while that's on hold, I'm focusing on other people's dreams.
Yeah, that's lovely, Amanda. Yeah. All right. I'm so, there's so much to be taken in here. And what is kind of space when we're in this virtual world, right? Like, I feel like we've suddenly, just with all of your vulnerability and sharing and openness, we have just kind of dived into this amazing space right now. So I'm sort of, on the one hand, just trying to honor that space while also moving us along so that each of you can share. So please know that I'm taking this in, and obviously we're recording this, and it's just, I think it's going to be very comforting and helpful, I think, to people who watch this as we move forward. But Stephen, I want to give you a chance to share as well.
Yeah, a few things come to mind. One, I just want to say thank you to Amanda. Every time I hear her talk about doing something amazing in Houston, especially with immigrants, it always just touches my heart, because I wish that I could be back in Houston doing more for, them, but it's good. It's an extension, but still, yes, I appreciate that. One of the things that really helped me was Music to Life, to be honest. Like, I'm not trying to just put a plug out there, but it really was, because we had those meetings monthly, and then also we had those check-ins, and those were just great opportunities for me to hear other people, for me to hear and learn, and to listen, and then also to share, like, how are we doing? What's going on? What's new? And I look forward to those meetings. I had a lot of, especially when COVID just hit, I had a lot of meetings online, and I was just like, oh, another one. But these were the ones where I'm like, this gives me life. These are those meetings. These are those people that I'm talking to that gives me life. The connections that I made with Sasha and Letty and others, and just Kamika and Amanda, like, just those gave me life, because we're all fighting. We're artists. We're all fighting to make the world as best as we can. And we're all struggling. Maybe we're having some ups, some achievements, some goals, some accomplishments. And then we're also having some real lows. Or, we're trying to get some grants, and we're like, I don't know how to write this. I write music. I don't write this. And then we struggle, and then we get a no. And we're like, man, I spent so much time on that. I could have wrote a song or something important. So just sharing that, having people to know, because I think one of the things, especially all of us, as we talk about, especially when we deal with depression and those emotions, is that we feel we're the only one going through it. And it's a lie. It's a lie, but it's a strong lie that we almost believe, because it makes us feel like, hey, I can have pity on myself. And I'm more of a homebody. Even though I love performing and speaking and rapping and things like that, I'm more of an introvert. So being at home all day was great for me. I'm like, okay, cool. I can stay at home. I can watch, and I have a reason for watching stuff on YouTube, and just not going out, not having to interact with a lot of people in the outside world. That was okay for me, because I'm kind of an introvert. I'm becoming an ambivert just because I have to, out of necessity. But and then I think we might get to it a little bit later, but you were asking about, so there's this gentleman named Jordan Peterson. Some people love him, some hate him, but he gave an analogy, which is from the movie Pinocchio. Pinocchio wants to be a real boy. And there's a part where his dad, or his puppet master, gets eaten by a whale. He's swallowed by a whale. And Pinocchio has to look inside of himself and become something different. So when we encounter things that are too difficult for us, that are too hard for us, our DNA actually changes and we become something different, because the person that I am today or that I was last year was not capable of dealing with the 2020 events and issues and dad and husband and home and all these things that I'm dealing with. So we actually become different people. We become a better version of ourselves as we go through that. And I know for myself, I hated conflict. I don't like conflict. And then I also don't like problems. I just want to be comfortable. But learning to embrace these difficulties, as Miles and Amanda said, learning to say, yes, I don't feel like it. Do it anyway. You don't feel like it, do it anyway. And when you do that anyway, you actually become a better version of yourself, because we're experiencing conflict. We're experiencing this pressure, just like diamonds, just like all these beautiful things, just like pearls. They're found in the deep areas of the earth, of the sea. And it's that pressure that makes it something beautiful, worthwhile having. And so having those conversations with people that are struggling, not just because sometimes when I have conversations with people that are just doing great all the time, I'm like, I don't want to be around you because I'm not doing great. So I need you to leave. But when I'm having with people that are, I guess I consider myself a realist, like, yeah, it was good, but this is what's bad. And then I say, okay, well, we can make it. We can make it. I get that hope. And then we encourage each other. And then in a sense, like everyone else was saying, that when I give, when I serve, when I give to other people, then it gives me life as well. So I'll kind of keep it short there.
Oh, that's very, very well said, Stephen. Really well said, all of you. I'm thinking maybe we'll just pause for a moment and just see if there are questions. I know we just have a few folks, online with us at the moment, but I do want to make sure, Craig, I know we talked about having some Q&A. So clearly you all have a lot to say, but I also want to see if there's anybody out there who, is really curious to tap your insights in a different kind of way. So.
Well, I want to just jump in real quick before we move on to other topics, if we get there. And thank Miles, Stephen, and Amanda for sharing such personal stuff. As someone who has been there, I understand. And I think folks need to hear that it's not okay to just say everything's great. That's not okay, because that just pushes it down further. Being able to be honest with yourself and honest with others, especially as a creative person, when you can't get out there and get on stage, you can't get in the DJ booth, you can't put on your dance shoes and go out and dance. That's hard. Or you're doing it in your living room, or you're doing it in front of a camera, as Amanda said. That's hard because the people aren't there. You want that hug, you want that validation, and that's what makes your art better in some aspects when you're bouncing stuff off of other people. I do have a question, though, that pivots back to music. But before I get there, I want to let folks know who are listening or watching, being that we've talked about some heavy stuff here. And I hope that it resonated with the folks that needed to hear this stuff. And to the folks that are looking for an outlet, please remember that there is a suicide prevention lifeline, they call it, 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Really important to get that out there to folks if they're feeling that they need some other support. So with that said, are you excited, or are you creating music? Excited to create music? And if you are making music right now, is it different than when you were making before? And has COVID been a deterrent to that, or has it made it you more creative? That's several different questions all at once. I guess I'll let Liz, you can sort of pick who goes first.
Oh no, whoever wants to go, that's fine. No, who wants to jump in on that, it's fine.
I'll jump in. I had been just full-time doing shows as much as possible before this, so I think I wrote more music this year than I have in years. Part of that is because I do, creative writing workshops every single week. So it's like, even if I'm writing a bunch of terrible things, like junk, I have so much of it, right? It's like, it's like you got to write it's like the old Bob Dylan, sort of metaphor is you got to write 1,000 bad songs before you make a hit. So I think I wrote my 1,000 bad songs this year. But within that, the practice of just writing again more often, whether I love it or not, has made it easier. It's made it so much easier to create because I've built in something into my schedule that is a routine. So now every week I have to write. Whether I'm tired or anxious or happy or sad, no matter what, I'm gonna write because I have the time there. And I have people who are holding me accountable. I have a whole group of people who are just there with me writing. So I've been more creative with coming up with new music. I put out an album at the beginning of December called Healing Hurts, and that kind of wraps up a lot of the things I was talking to you guys about. And it's a very different album. It's not. It's an evolution of things that I've done before, but it's mostly. It's probably the most raw and vulnerable and personal thing I've ever made.
Miles, if I can jump in, was it a change of genre for you when you did the pivot to talking about the Healing Hurts, or are you still doing what you were doing before, but just more emotional?
Yeah, I would say it's a slight pivot of genre. It's kind of an amalgamation of kind of folky acoustic music with some hip hop, with some kind of spoken word, and then with this angsty punk rock feel as well. It's kind of all those things jumbled up, and the themes are heavy. It's like heavy stuff, but a friend of mine used to say it's like having a hard truth in a soft container.
I love that. I sometimes go to something that supports me in my being depressed. Not necessarily depression, but I want to not be alone in my tears. And a great band for me is this band called Red House Painters. Not sure if you know them, but they have an amazing album called Songs for a Blue Guitar. And whenever I'm feeling depressed, yes, I'm not by myself, and I'll just sit and cry in the corner. And then after it's all over, I feel better.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think the difference that's amazing. The difference in my mindset on making this record as to before I was writing about the same things. I was still writing about grief. I was still writing about depression and anxiety and social justice and, prison reform and all of these things, and racism. I've been talking about these things for a decade, right? But the difference now is this is the first time I wrote from a very vulnerable place, an uncertain place, a place where I don't know the answers. Whereas before, when you're confident, when you're like living in this thing, you're like, yes, I know these things are there and everything's going to be all right, and I'm sure of it. I didn't have any sureness at all on this record, and I think that's possibly the strongest part of it, is that I came from this, it's still optimistic, it's still hopeful, but it's very uncertain. I don't know what this feeling is and how I'm going to get through it, but this is my, auditioning, trying it out. I'm really just trying it out, and I don't know what's going to happen. So that's where my music went this year, and for better or worse, it was more of a thing for me anyways, realizing I can't tour. It's like, who puts out an album right now? Like, what's the point of putting out an album? Like, that's crazy to put out an album for someone like me who, 90% of the people who listen to me are people who see me in person. And so I already had a bad odds of trying to make a hit record. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make the most realistic thing I can, and it's not going to be a pop album. It's not going to be for everyone, but I think I made the most honest piece of art that I've been able to make because of this year, because I had time. I wasn't busy. I was here with myself and my instruments and my experience, so I had to capture it. And I wouldn't have had the time to do this, even with all the grief and all the things I dealt with. I was gonna go on tour. I was ready. you know, like 3 days after my dad dies, I did a show. I went to do performances through it all, and I would have just shoved down all the grief if I didn't have this outlined time to just be with myself.
And I'll just add sort of the courage and the bravery to be with yourself in that way. Because right? I mean, as opposed to going in all kinds of other directions to find ways to kind of stuff it down or deny it or not look at it. So, yeah. I want to check in actually with you, Craig, because I know it's 10 of 2, and I'd love to hear some thoughts from Stephen and Amanda, and I'd love to close, with just kind of maybe some tips and tools or some really sort of practical ways for artists to kind of move forward and balance this kind of, their own creativity with their giving back. And so what do you tell me about our time?
I mean, if we go a little bit over, I'm okay with that. If you're okay with that, I mean, I'm really appreciative of the conversation we're having right now. And I think a lot of folks, this is necessary. So wherever we go and wherever we end, I think it's okay.
Okay.
There was something from Bob. I don't know if you want to read that.
Oh, there is. Oh, great. Okay. Bob says, first, thank you all for sharing. 2020 has created an opportunity for people to listen differently about issues that have been here all along. So how do we keep that going in a hopefully post-pandemic world? And I'll just add, let's by all means, how do we keep that going? And I know that, again, one of the things that Music to Life is trying to do is how do we sort of deepen impact on the issues by kind of rolling up our sleeves around these issues too, as musicians have really done, as part of this. So, anyone want to, that's great, Bob. Thank you. That's the kind of question that I actually really wanted to sort of end on. But anybody want to jump in yet? Stephen, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I can share. And I think it's kind of what, a little bit what I was sharing earlier is that, so 2020 has been, obviously one of the craziest years I've ever experienced, but there's also been these unique opportunities. So again, with the shutting down of a lot of things, again, I'm very heavily into the faith. Like, if it wasn't for that, I would be dead or in jail. And so there was a shutdown of churches. And so most of people say, oh, it's a bad thing, but it made me appreciate. So I think 2020 has made us really appreciate certain things that are not that important. There's certain things that are not that important. Again, social status and all this other stuff. But then also like having church in my home and just hanging out with my kids and spending time with them and just having that experience is so important versus us going to a church. They go to children's church. We go to adult church and we're separate. We don't experience how, when I'm singing songs or I'm having a moment or I'm just reflecting, and they never experience that. But when I'm at home, they can experience that with me. When I'm at home, they can see, oh, this is what daddy does. Oh, this is how daddy. And so I think those things are important. So I think what keeps us and helps us to keep that hope alive is focus on right now, focus on today. We prepare for tomorrow. We don't want to just, you only live once and just blow it all, but live in the moment and enjoy this moment. In 9/11, 2019, I lost my dad, and he was an alcoholic. He wasn't there for my graduation. He was there briefly for when I got married and things like that. And I just always reflect back on his life with us and in my life with my kids. And I remember one of my earliest memories, I remember like he loved the Three Stooges, and I'll forever remember that. Well, I'll forever remember that. And then obviously I have some bad times. And so I'm like, okay, let me live in the moment. Let me enjoy this moment. And if I pass away, let's say, unfortunate events happen, I want my kids to remember these good times. Yeah, it's going to be sad. It's going to be sorrowful. They're going to be sad, but they're going to remember. I remember when my dad did this. I remember. And so I think, I forget your name. I'm sorry. You were saying about like what my genre switching. I've been making a lot more kids songs, just like freestyling with my kids, and they're watching TV. And so my daughter and my son are like kind of like freestyling and coming up with songs and rapping. And so, so things like that. So just how can we make today? So my whole brand is do something great. And my website is do something great.today, because we always think I have to get that degree. I have to achieve this. I have to sell that. I have to do this. And then I'm great. Like, no, do something great today. Let's embody today. Let's take today. And we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But if we focus on, because a lot of my friends, they're worried about what's going to happen. They were worried about the election. They're worried about COVID. They're worried about all these things. And I'm like, all you're doing is worrying. You're not enjoying today. So focus on today and let's take care of what we can. And then the other stuff we prepare for, but we that's no way to live. That's not living.
I mean, I think the other thing you're saying there is that sort of attitude of gratitude also, which I've sort of heard come through here. How can you look around and be appreciative for what you have? Yeah. So I think about that Cat Stevens song. You know, if I ever lose my legs, I won't moan and I won't beg. If I ever lose my legs, I just won't have to walk anymore. Whatever. Like, it's great. I can't remember what the title is. If I ever lose my teeth. So I mean, he goes through this whole thing. And it's all about, you know, how are you going to be grateful for what you have? So anyway, but Amanda, I want to give you a chance to respond to anything really we've been sort of sharing but Bob's question is kind of this, how do we keep going? And of course, I'm always curious about the, you know, giving back piece to what you guys have all been doing, but how do we keep going in a post-pandemic kind of world?
I don't know. Like, I don't know what the answer to that is. I think that, so when Bob wrote, 2020 has created an opportunity for people to listen differently about issues that have been here all along. I think a lot of that is due to social media, because whereas before we were everybody was kind of spread out in their own circles, I think now we've kind of like converged to going to one place where we can talk to people, which is on social media. And I guess social media provides a platform to talk about issues that have been here all along, but now that we're in this time period where we have a lot of very advanced technology, we have videos of things that are happening and posters or graphics that we can share. So I think we're more connected to what's going on than we were before. Like, I think a lot of people say that 2020 was a really bad year because a lot of bad things happened, which is true. But also, we're increasingly moving into a time period where we are knowing about the bad things faster because we have a lot of good technology. And so I don't know how we keep that going into a post-pandemic world. I hope that would solve itself. I hope that 2020 creates such a lasting impression on us that we permanently change our way of listening to things, of listening to others, listening to marginalized people, because I don't want us to forget 2020, and maybe we won't. So yeah, I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, but and yet you shared many interesting perspectives on that question. So thank you for that, Amanda. We're actually, as it turns out, we're just about at 2:00. So what do you think?
We're getting close. I guess I'd open it up to a couple more questions if folks have things they'd like to ask. But one thing I want to touch on with Amanda, I think that is really important. And at least now with, all of us being sort of shut in, so to speak, we have the time to sit and watch and pay attention to what others have been saying for years. Like, I've been hated on, or, I get called names or I get looked at, and I think Dave Chappelle put it perfectly. And I also had a conversation with Patrick Leahy, senator here from Vermont, for a special I did for BPR. And it was in May, and we're all sitting home. We're all scared. We're getting all this information given to us that we didn't have the time to pay attention to before. And then we watch a man die for 8 minutes and 46 seconds on our television. Every single one of us watched that and finally said, oh my God, people weren't lying. This is really happening. This is the truth. So I think that the positive of those horrible things, as John Lewis told to Patrick Leahy, there's necessary evil. When John Lewis walked across the bridge, the Norman Pettus Bridge years ago, if the wind hadn't blown just right because the police officers had put out smoke bombs, so the TV cameras couldn't see them being beaten and the dogs biting them and them being shot. If the wind hadn't blown just right and moved the smoke away, the world would not have seen John Lewis get beat on the head, and civil rights for voting may have not happened. Sadly, George Floyd lost his life. And so with that said, at least we know where the monster is and that the monster exists, and hopefully we can tackle that. And I'm really excited, and it's sort of pivoting back to music. I'm excited to hear what folks are going to come out with at the end of this. I'm sure there's going to be some amazing, depressing, but also cathartic music through this whole project of our life. And I'm calling it a project, but that's what it is, because we don't know. We're all still figuring it out. And as one person said, who I had as part of a presentation I did, the young people are watching us flounder. And when this happens again, because it will, they'll know what to do, because we gave them the roadmap. They saw us fall down and get back up and keep trying to fix things to the point where we are where we are now, and hopefully getting better as we go into 2021. So I don't know where you'd like to leave it. I'd like to, if folks have one more question, or if folks have one more thing they'd like to end with, if Miles would like to talk about the Ellen fish behind his head on his piano there, or Amanda, a book that's your favorite book right now, whatever you'd like to close with. I don't know if the fish from Little Mermaid is inspirational, but I'd love to hear that if it is.
No, it was a prop for a music video I did, though. I did a music video in a grocery store, and those the scale that hangs from the chains next to the produce. I put it in the scale, so going around the produce, there's just a random fish in there.
Awesome, love it.
That's a great video, by the way. I am not for everyone. I am not for everyone. Yeah. One of the thoughts I had, Craig, is there a chance to, I'd love folks to be able to explore more about our accelerator. I'd love folks to get to know Miles and Amanda and Stephen better. Will there be an opportunity to share, socials and
I would love for them to, and if they'd like to put them in the chat right now, maybe say your social stuff as we close, so that when people are watching this later or listening to the radio or online, they can get in touch with you later on and hear your music, but also reach out if they need to. So maybe good. I guess start with Miles and then move along the line.
Sure, yeah, you can just Google my name. That's Miles Bullen. You can see it. It's right on the screen. Yeah, you can go anywhere you want to consume art or music. There's a spot for you on the internet with my name attached to it.
Awesome.
It's true. And Amanda, so was that a good prompt in terms of what's behind you, a book prompt, or is there something else around you you'd like to hold up and show us?
So my dad was a professor, and so that's why there are a bunch of books behind me. They're not mine. I do read a lot. In fact, I just got finished yesterday indexing and proofreading a book about Dante in Italian for one of my former professors, but these are not my books. I just like this space because it motivates me to read a little bit more, listen a little bit more, and talk a little bit less, I guess.
Sounds good. Stephen, any final totem or something either in your background or just something on your mind to share?
So I wish I was kind of listening to the last part, and then for some reason my computer kicked me out again. It's the year of of uncertainty, but it's also the year for us to rise up. I think really like for us to look at fear in the face and not let it stop us. But also I put mine in the website, do something great in the chat box, do something great today, and then do something great today for Instagram as well. You can find all the other stuff. But I really appreciate this opportunity to share and speak with the other artists as well.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. And I guess I'll say too, you know, these are kind of funny to say this, but having worked now with these artists and 7 others around the country, you know, we now are building a national network of activist musicians. And so part of this coming year will be, you know, connecting Stephen, Amanda, and Miles with other aspiring social change artists. So creating opportunities for them to be mentors, creating opportunities for them to keep going with their own projects and, you know, connecting them with ongoing learning. And then, you know, we have dreams of conferences and, you know, sort of other, and frankly, sort of case studies, you know, around the country. How is music? How are musicians everywhere kind of stepping off the stage and into activism, and how can we be supportive of them? And so I really just encourage you to keep in touch with, musictolife.org. We have all kinds of stuff coming up in 21, and just so honored to be kind of a facilitator, of this sort of process of music and activism. So
thank you so much. Before we finish, I'd like you to read the last comment in the chat.
Me?
Yes, Liz.
Okay. This is from Shirley Reed. Thank you. I've been isolated. You've been inspiring.